Hi, it's MP the tutor again, and today we're going to look at factors and factorising, including quadratics, like 2x squared plus 11x plus 12. But we're going to start off today looking at smaller, simpler ones, and then we'll move on to the slightly more fiddly ones. And actually, I'm first of all going to go to expanding brackets, which was our previous video. So I'm going to quickly do a little multiplication grid, and feel free to go back to the other video in the description for 1.2 for expanding brackets, but we have 4 times 3x and 5. So 3 times 4 is 12 with an x, and 4 times 5 is 20. So that gets you 12x plus 20. Now, factorising is the reverse of expanding brackets, and it's a slightly more fiddly process. What we need to do is figure out what, in terms of our numbers at least, first of all, what do those both 12 and 20 divide by? Really, what we need to find is actually the highest common factor. So if I went the factors of 12, you got 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And the factors of 20 are 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. Now our highest common factor for both of these is 4. You don't have to write the factors of 20 or factors of 12 and 20 if you already know that they both divide by 4 and that's the best you can do. And if you're doing A-level maths, you should be able to just do this in your head. So what we end up with is 4, and then we put a bracket. Now, if there was extra letters on both of them, which we'll do in the next question, you might have some other letters as well after the 4 before the bracket. And then what we do is we divide both of them by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3, and then we have an x, and 20 divided by 4 is 5. So you go back to the previous expanding of the brackets. So what about if I went factorize? Let's go for 18x minus 24. Well, we need the factors of 18. It is 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6. And the factors of 24 is 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. The highest common factor between both of them is 6. And again, you don't really need to know, write them out. If you can go, actually, I look at these numbers, and I know they both divide by 6. And that's the highest I can go. So I'm going to do 6, bracket, 18 divided by 6 is 3, which is also our other number left in our factor pairs. And then we have an x, and this time it's a minus, and then it's 24 divided by 6 is 4. So let's have a little look at ones with lots of letters. So let's say I had, let's go for 20x cubed plus 30x squared. Now, I'm not going to bother writing the factors of 20 and 30 out. I know that the best I can do here in terms of division of 20 and 30 is a 10. I also look at my letters. So they both have letters here in terms of x, but you could have y, you could have sheep, you could do whatever thing. And I have an x cubed and an x squared. So what I can do is I can divide them both by x squared. So I'm going to take an x squared out, and then I have my bracket. And then I divide x cubed, so we have x cubed divided by x squared equals just x to the power of 1, or just x on its own. And then we have plus, and I've left it a blank at the moment, because we then have x squared divided by x squared is 1. But we still need to think about the numbers. So 20 divided by 10 is 2, and 30 divided by 10 is 3. I've kind of done that a bit of a random order, but what we're kind of doing is 20x cubed divided by 10x squared is 2x, and 30x squared divided by 10x squared is 3. And that's our two parts of that. So that is it factorized. But what about if it's got multiple symbols? So let's go for 12 again. And I'm going to have sheep. Let's do sheep. Power of 40. Stickman to power of 10. Minus 8. Sheep. Power of 25. Stickman. Power of 100. So let's have a little look at this a second. We look at our 12 and our 8. And I know the best I can divide those both by is 4. Then I'm looking at my sheeps. And I got sheep with a 40 and sheep with a 25. And the best I can do is sheep to 25. So you basically take the lowest number of powers. And then I look at my stickman. And I go, well, what can I do with a stickman? I got stickman to 10, stickman to 100. So I can get 10 stickman away from both of them. Then I put my bracket. And I'm going to work through one at a time. So here, I'm going to do basically 12 divided by 4. I'm writing that. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Sheep to the 40 divided by sheep to the 25 is sheep to 15. Stickman to the 10 divided by stickman to the 10 is, or 1, basically 1. So we're kind of turning to my 1, but we didn't bother writing it. Then I do the minus symbol. So sometimes it's plus, sometimes it's minus. And we have 8 divided by 4 is 2. Sheep to the 25 divided by sheep to the 25 is 1. So we don't bother writing that because it's like 2 times 1. And stickman to the 100 divided by stickman to the 10 is stickman power of 90. Then we close the brackets. So that has been factorized. So I've now done a couple of examples of these simple factorizing where you just take out one component. Why don't you pause the screen now and have a little go, get some paper and have a go. And in a moment, I will work through them. So pause, and in a second, I'll work through. So hopefully you've had a chance to have a go at these. But let's wander through them ourselves. So if we look at the first example, and at least the number side of it, we have a 40 in the first bit and 30 in the second bit. The best I can divide them both by is 10. The second bit's got no letters, so that's as good as we can go. And then we're going to divide them both by 10. So the 40 divided by 10 is 4. And then we have an x minus, and then 30 divided by 10 is 3. So that's it. That's the first one. Let's have a little look at the next one. So we have a 20 and a 50 in terms of our numbers. So again, the best we can do here is 10. And we have an x cubed and an x. And this is kind of like x to the power of 1. We don't bother writing the 1. But we then put an x there. So we can basically then divide the x cubed by x. So x cubed divided by x is x squared. But we have to do our numbers first. So 20 divided by 10 is 2. And then we have x squared. And then we put a minus in. And then our 50 divided by 10 is 5. And then x divided by x is 1. So it kind of just disappears. So let's look at our next one. Here we have 12x squared and minus 6x. 12 and 6, the best we can do is a 6. Here we have an x squared and an x, so that actually leaves us with an x. And then that's it for in terms of what's outside the bracket. 12 divided by 6 is 2. And then we have an x squared divided by x just gets you an x. We have a minus symbol, and then 6 divided by 6 is 1, and x divided by x is also 1. So we put a 1 at the end. Now, big issues people forget to do is don't put the 1. So because they both kind of cancel or both get rid of with the 6x, people often forget this -1 or +1 or whatever the thing is at the end for those ones. So here we have our next one. We have 30 and we have 50. In terms of our numbers, the best we can do is 10. So we have 10, a cubed and a squared gets you an a squared, the best we can do. B to the power of 4, b to the power of 10. Again, the best we can do is b to the power of 4. We then open our brackets, and then we start dividing. So 30 divided by 10 is 3. A cubed divided by a squared gets you just a. B to the power of 4 divided by b to the power of 4 is 1. So therefore that just disappeared. Then we have our plus symbol. 50 divided by 10 is 5. A squared divided by a squared is 1. So that kind of disappears. It's just a times by 1. And b to the power of 10 divided by b to the power of 4 is b to the power of 6. Done. Okay, let's have a little look at our final one. So we have 400, we have 600. So the best we can do here is 200. Now, I don't really want to write out all the factors of 400 and 600 and work out the highest common, because that would be a pain. But I can just look at, well, with hundreds being, I got 4 and 6, the best there I can do is 2 with 2 zeros on both. So it's like 2 with 2 zeros. Then look at our letters. We have a to the power of 5 and a cubed. So the best I can do here is a cubed. Here I have b to the 10 and b to the 4. So the best I can do there is b to the 4. Then let's go through and divide them out. So we have 400 divided by 200 is 2. A to the power of 5 divided by a cubed gets you a squared. B to the 10 divided by b to the 4 is b to the power of 6. Then a minus symbol. 600 divided by 200 is 3. A cubed divided by a cubed is 1. So it's kind of like a times by 1, but we don't bother writing that. B to the power of 4 divided by b to the power of 4 is again another 1, but we don't bother writing times by 1. And then we close our brackets. So that there is our first 5 of these questions. So let's go on to factorising quadratics, which is when they got x squareds. Now, I'm going to start off by looking at the ones of only just 1x squared, and then we'll move on to a completely different method for when we've got like 2x squared and 3x and so on and so on and so on. So first of all, I'm just going to do some expanding of this bracket, which we did in the previous video. So x and 3 times x and 5, x times x gets you x squared, x times 3 is 3x, x times 5 is 5x, and 3 times 5 is 15. We then add our like terms together, or I'll just write them out first of all, x squared plus 3x plus 5x plus 15, which gets you x squared plus 8x plus 15. Which is obviously what I've written to factorise, because it's planned. Now, let's have a little closer look at this bracket. Obviously, you have your x squared, but so here we have a 3 and a 5. And what we can do is we're going to, at the bottom, the 15 you see here, and that's what we're going to times to me. So 3 times 5 is 15. Well, this bit here, the 8, is what we add to make. So 3 plus 5 is 8. So when we have these factorising quadratics with the x squared, what we need to do is first of all get the factors of the final number, the 15, which is 1 times 15 and 3 times 5. Now I would expect you to be able to work out the factors of 15. They don't tend to go too crazy, even at A level. Maybe 36, 42, and be able to work the factors of those ones out. I've not really seen them ever do things like factors of 288 and expect you to work all those factors out by hand. But with a calculator, it's not too bad. So we have a bracket, x, and close bracket, another x, and close bracket. Then we need to think about what do I use to make multiply by 15 but add to make 8. So 1 plus 15, that's 16, that doesn't work. But 3 plus 5 equals 8, which does. So it's a plus 3 and a plus 8. I like to, when I'm teaching this, to write out the sums, but you can do these in your head. So let's look at something like factorize x squared plus 10x plus 24. So first of all, the factors are 24. We are 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. We put a bracket with our x, another bracket with the x. So now we've got all the factors of 24 down. It's time to go through our different combinations. Now, I need to multiply to make positive and add to make a positive. So from that, I know that I need to have two positives, because a positive and positive is a positive. And then just go through different combinations. So, for example, 1 plus 24 is 25. Well, that's not what I'm looking for, because I'm looking for 10. 2 plus 12 is 14. I'm not going to get that one. 3 plus, or not times, let's go 3 plus 8 is 11. Well, that's not what I'm looking for either. But 4 plus 6 is 10. Way. It's like it's planned to be the last one. So it's plus 4 and a plus 6. And that is factorize. Let's do another one, which is going to be very similar but slightly different. So we're going to have x squared plus 10x minus 24. So we have 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. So we're going to have our brackets, which is like this. So it's blank at the moment. But then I need to think about how do I multiply to make a negative? Well, if I have two positives, that ain't going to get me a negative. What I need to have is a positive and a negative. And then I'm going to go through my combinations. So I could do like 1 minus 24. Well, that's minus 23. 2 minus 12, that's minus 10. 3 minus 8 is a really exciting minus 5. 4 minus 6 is minus 2. We have 24 minus 1 is 23. 12 minus 2 is 10. We have 8 minus 3 is 5. And 6 minus 4 is 2. And only one of those works, which is that one, which I ticked with the red. So it's a plus 12 and a minus 2. Now, obviously, I've written them all out, and there are more combinations with the negative example. Most of my students can do this in their head quite easily once they've got the rhythm of writing out the factors and then going which pair, where one number minus the other one would get you 10 in this case. But obviously, we could have something quite similar. Let's change the color to a light blue or green. Let's go green, eco-friendly green. So I had x squared minus 10x minus 24. And let's put our brackets, x and x. I still have a plus and a minus because I'm multiplying to make minus 24. But now I need to get to minus 10. Well, that's because I then need that one there. That's a plus 2 and a minus 12. And hopefully you're noticing that I'm keeping the same number. So I've got 10x plus 24, 10x minus 24, minus 10x minus 24. And we might as well go crazy and have x squared minus 10x plus 24. So let's write the factors of 24. So you've got 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. We're going to have our brackets like so. But this time we need to think about how do I multiply to make a positive? So a positive 24 is what we're multiplying, but I'm adding to make a negative. Well, I could multiply to make a positive by having two positives, but that ain't going to get me to my minus 10. But what I could also have is two minuses, because a minus and a minus multiplies to make a plus. And then I need to go through the wonderful combinations of minus 1 minus 24 equals minus 25. Well, that doesn't work. Minus 2 minus 12 equals minus 14. Well, that doesn't work either. Minus 3 minus 8 is minus 11. Well, that doesn't work either. So I'm going to get minus 10. And funnily enough, it's the final one. Ooh, actually, minus 6 and minus 4 minus 6 is minus 10. Hooray! So that's the minus 4 and the minus 6. When you get into the flow of it, it's actually not that bad. So I'm going to then write some examples and I'll get you to have a go. Just be a little careful with the pluses and minuses. And there are kind of two ways to get there. So if you see here, we've got the 4 and 6 and the 2 and the 12. There's two kind of ways to get to 10. But there'll be similar questions coming up in a moment. So we now have 7 more questions on the screen. So the first 5 are in the first part of the video. And I want you to pause the video now and have a go. There'll all be double brackets with a single x in each. And then in a moment, we will work through it. So hopefully you've had a go now. And I'm going to scroll down. We're going to have a little wander through these questions. So number 6. So they all got a bracket like this, x and an x with a blank. And I like to do even blank. And I first of all think, okay, how do I multiply to make a positive, but also add to make a positive? Well, they're all going to be positive. And then I need the factors of 30. So the factors of 30, I'm going to write it down. The factors of 30. 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and 5 times 6. And I've written down there because I'm going to reuse them in a moment for some of the other questions, which are exactly the same numbers, but we have difference of plus and minus and all that jazz. And I think, okay, what factors of 30 add to make 13? Well, 1 add 30 is 31. That doesn't work. 2 add 15 is 17. That doesn't work. 3 plus 10 is 13. That's what I'm looking for. So 3 and 10. And once you've figured it out, we stop. So a little bit like I'm talking out here, I'm not writing down these sums. I don't need to. I wouldn't thought you need to actually write down 2 plus 15 to figure out that it's 17. And you can probably work out in your head. So let's have a little look at the next one. I'm going to write our x with our bracket, x and our bracket. And I'm leaving the blank like last time. So I need to multiply to make minus 30. So how do I multiply to make a minus? Well, I'm going to have a plus and a minus. And then I'm going to go through all my different numbers. So I go 1 minus 30. 1 minus 30 is minus 29. That ain't what I'm looking for. 2 minus 15. 2 minus 15 is minus 13. That is what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for a plus 2 and a minus 15. Okay, let's look at the next one. Let's put our brackets in. X and an x. I can still see my factors of 30 there. I'm going to write them again for the next one. Now I need to multiply to make a positive, but add to make a negative. So this is where we have two negatives. So to multiply two negatives together, I get a positive, and minus 1 minus 30 is minus 31. That's not what I'm looking for. Minus 2 minus 15 is minus 17. Again, I'm looking for minus 13. That's not what I'm looking for. Minus 3 minus 10. Minus 3 minus 10. Perfect. Let's wander to the next one. Now, I think I'm going to have to write the factors of 30 again. So factors of 30. 1 times 30. 2 times 15. 3 times 10. And 5 times 6. Let's get our brackets going. An x and an x. and I need a plus and a minus because I have a minus at the end. And then I go through my numbers. 1 minus 30 is minus 29. That doesn't work. 2 minus 15 is a no. That's minus 13. 3 minus 10 is minus 7. No. 5 minus 6. No, that's minus 1. 6 minus 5 is 1. 10 minus 3 is 7. I want 13, so that ain't going to work. And 15 minus 2 is positive 13. So it's plus 15 and minus 2. Now I could have sped that up a little bit. I'm going to slightly tidy that up. So if I get rid of that and the bracket for better. Once I figured out that I did 2 minus 15 is minus 13, I know I've got the right digit, but I don't have the right sign in terms of positive negatives. When you get to that, sometimes you can just go, well, let's try it the other way around. 15 minus 2. Yes. So let's have a look at our next two. Again, I've personally done them quite similar. And I've done a really difficult number to find factors of. So I need to go into factors of 6. Are 1 in 6 and 2 in 3. Now actually it's quite funny where this one stumps people sometimes because they get focused on one of our brackets. So we're going to put x, 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 x. Now how do I multiply to make a positive but add to make a negative? Well, I'm going to need two negatives here. So the top one here, we've got 1 minus 6 is minus 7. Minus 2 minus 3 is our minus 5. So it's a 2 and a 3. Here, how do I multiply to make a negative 6? Well, that's a plus and a minus. And then I need to get to plus 5. So like 1 minus 6 is not plus 5. It is minus 5. But 6 minus 1 is our positive 5. So plus 6 minus 1. And again, just be a little bit careful because sometimes the numbers might seem simple, but I've seen many people make mistakes on this one here. Okay, let's look at our final one. So we scroll down, and we now need the factors of 60. And I don't tend to see much beyond factors of 60. So you've got 1 times 60, 2 times 30, 3 times 20, 4 times 15, 5 times 12, and 6 times 10. This 6 times 6, 6 times 10. So this is where I sometimes see people muck up because they might do the 3 and 20 and think, oh, it's 20 minus 3 is 17. But we've got the 5 and 12. So it's kind of here and here. And you just got to be a little bit careful because they'll often choose one which is of this mix of you could do one way or the other to get to your 17, or the previous one it was 5, and the one before that there's multiple ways for 13. Okay, so I need to multiply to make a positive and add to make a positive. So these are going to have 2 pluses. And how do I get to 17? Well, we have a plus 5 and plus 12. Will get to me 17. Okay, so let's have a little look at this one. So here we have an x squared and a number at the end. And in reality, it's kind of the same. So I'm going to show you a quick way to go about these in a moment. But we still have our x and our x. I'm going to do the factors of 16. We have 1 times 16, 2 times 8, and 4 times 4. We need to have a plus and a minus to get a minus at the end. And then I look at my factor combinations and how many x's do we have? Because actually I could write this as x squared plus 0x minus 16. Because the 0x we don't bother writing. And then I go, well, what number do I need to get to 0? Well, obviously it's not 1 in 16, because 16 minus 1 is 15 or whatever. 8 minus 2 is 6. Well, that clearly don't work, but 4 minus 4, quite obviously. Because 4 minus 4 equals 0. So plus 4 and a minus 4. But what about another one? Let's go quickly do another one. Let's go really crazy and have x squared minus 25 bracket x plus and x minus the factor 25. We have 1 times 25 and 5 times 5. That's it. So I'm trying to keep both on the screen at the same time. Which ones? Okay, one minus the other gets you 0. Well, clearly it's 5 and 5. Now, hopefully with this, you're able to spot that we have like the fact the square root of 16 is 4 and the square root of 25 is 5. So with these ones, where you just have an x squared and a number, we are kind of going to do square roots of our terms. So if I had x squared minus 49, for example, what I'm doing is I'm going to do the square root of x squared, which is x, and the square root of 49, which is 7. And I just go x plus 7, x minus 7. But I can kind of mix it a little bit more. So if I had 4x squared minus, let's go for 9. Well, the square root of 4x squared is 2x, because the square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of x squared is just x. And the square root of 9 is 3. So I then do 2x plus 3, 2x minus 3. We could have other letters. So we could have, let's go for 16 a squared minus, let's do 81 b squared. Well, the square root of 16 a squared is 4a. And the square root of 81 b squared is 9b. And then we should do the same thing. So 4a plus 9b, 4a minus 9b. We might have other bigger numbers. So I'm going to do for 100. Let's go for m to the power of 16 plus, not plus, should be minus, sorry, minus, I'm going to go 49 again. We're going to go for q to the power of 10. Now, if I do the square root of 100, m to the power of 16, and this is what sometimes gets people. The square root of 100 is obviously 10, but with our powers, it's like doing m to the 16 times, or in brackets, m to the 16 in brackets the power of a half. Because the square root and power of a half are the same thing, which is m to the power of 8, because we multiply our powers. So the square root of m to the 16 is m to the 8, not m to the 4. And the square root of 49 q to the 10 is 49. The square root of 49 is 7. And the square root of q to 10 is q to the power of 5. So you're basically halving square roots with powers. So we're going to do 10m to the 8 plus 7q to the 5 brackets 10m to the 8 minus 7q to the 5. So here are 3 questions on the screen. I want you to just spend a moment, have a go, and see if you can factorize them. So you can pause now, and then I'll explain and go through in a moment. Okay, so let's have a little wander through these 3 questions. I'm going to go eco-friendly green. I hope that comes on your screen nice and clearly. So we're going to have bracket and a bracket. Now let's look at the 25x squared. So the square root of 25 is 5. And the square of x squared is x. So you have 5x and 5x. One's a plus, one's a minus. And the square root of 36 is 6. So we have a 6 and a 6. So that's our first one done. What about the next one? Well, the square root of 16 is 4. So we have 4. And the square root of x to the power of 100 is x to the power of 50. So with our powers and square roots, we just half it. So we are dividing by 2 or half of. And then we have a plus, well, the square root of 1 is 1. And then we have 4x to the 50 minus 1. So perfect same thing. Okay, now we have sheep and stickman. I thought I'd get those out again. Have a sheep, which is and a stickman or the shepherd as well. Okay, so the square root of 36 is 6, and I purposely made them 16 and 36, which are squared numbers, but who cares, because actually we're just going to half it, so we're going to have sheep, do a little bit smaller, power of 8, plus 16, the square root of 16 is 4, so with our numbers we are actually square rooting, with our powers we are kind of divided by 2, which is square rooting, but it's still the same thing. Stickman, and half of 36. So you don't be afraid to do a little bus stop method or however you like to do it if you're not sure on half of 36, but half of 36 is 18. Okay. Then we have closed brackets and open brackets, and we're going to write the same. 6 sheep, power of 8 minus 4 stickman, power of 18. Okay, so that's our 3 questions answered. So I'm going to now go on to a little bit of chapter 2, because on the factorising of quadratics with the 2x squared or 3x squared, I'm going to use a method which I call cheating via the quadratic formula. But first of all, I'm going to explain a little bit around it first. So, I should put equals 0 here. So what we can do, we need the factors of 20, 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. So here we have x plus x minus, and now we need to figure out what makes 8. Well, 20 minus 1 is 19, and 10 minus 2 is 8, so it's plus 10 minus 2 equals 0. So with this, we then are at the stage where we were last time, but now we have this extra 0 plus 0 or equals 0. So what we do is we go x plus 10 equals 0 or x minus 2 equals 0. So basically we have two things multiplied together. If one of them's 0, the other one, I don't care what it is, because my answer is 0. So I go something plus 10 is 0. What is my 10? What is my something? Well, x equals minus 10. And in theory, you could write, well, how do I get rid of plus 10? Well, minus 10. And how something minus 2 is 0. Well, therefore I have x equals 2. So this is kind of chapter 2 or starting of chapter 2. And I'm actually going to go even further, and I'm going to now go into what's called the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is if ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, then x equals minus b plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so here we have the quadratic formula I've written out. And we have x squared plus 8x minus 20. So let's say we wanted to work out the previous one. We could have factorized it, or we could use the quadratic formula. So a is the number of x squared, which in this case is 1. B is the number of x's, which is 8. And c is the number of units, which is minus 20. Now the quadratic formula is really useful if you have a calculator. You can gently work your way through it without a calculator if the numbers aren't ridiculous. However, if you're doing A-level maths, all 3 exam papers have a calculator, as long as you remember to take it into your exam. And if you forget to take your calculator into your exam, you're not going to do very well, probably. So, Let's have a little look at what this means with this formula. Well, all we have to do is replace our letters with the numbers we've got. So we've got minus 8 plus and minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times minus 20 all over 2 times 1. And you plug that into a calculator, whichever calculator you've got. Obviously, it has to be a scientific one. And you would get x equals minus 10 and x equals 2. So there's two ways to solve our equations. But what about using it to factorize? So if I went, let's just go below. If I go factorize x squared plus 8x minus 20, which is again what we've been doing. And I wouldn't use this method for a single x squared, but I'm going to just use this as an example. What you've got is you've got x equal to minus 10 and x equal to 2 when we used the quadratic formula a moment ago. But when we look back at our factors, I'm going to scroll back up. What we've kind of got is we are at this stage here where I'm circling, and we need to go back up. So instead of it equaling a number, we need to make it equal to 0. Well, how do I make it equal 0? How do I get rid of that plus 10? Well, I go plus 10. So we then have x plus 10 equals 0, and that is our bracket. And here we go minus 2. So x minus 2 equals 0, and that's our second bracket. So we're then x plus 10, x minus 2. Cool. Obviously, I'm not going to do it that way. 4 single x squareds, but let's have a little look at this next one. So we have factorized 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. So what we're going to have is we have that minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now a is the number of x squared, which in this case is 2. B is the number of x's, which is 5. And c is the number of units, which is minus 12. So I'm going to plug in the calculator because our x equals, plug the x bit, but we go minus b, which is minus 5, plus and minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times minus 12 all over 2 times 2. And what are we going to get with that? So we've typed that in a calculator, and what we will get is you get x equals 3 over 2, or x equals minus 4. So I'm going to start off on the minus 4 because that's the easy one to deal with first. And I just need to get x on its own. Well, I just add 4 to both bits. So we get x plus 4 equals 0. That's our first bracket sorted. Nice and simple. Let's look at the other one. Well, here I've got this divided by 2. So first of all, I'm going to times everything by 2. So we get 2x equals 3. And then I'm going to get rid of that 3 by taking it away. So minus 3. So you have 2x minus 3 equals 0. And that's our two factors I put in brackets. So you have 2x minus 3, x plus 4. Cool. I'm going to do one more example of this, so make sure it goes in. But basically what we do is we quadratic formula it, and you would get two values for x. We then rearrange to make x equals 0 for each of those, and that works out our factors. Okay, so here I have a final one of 3x squared minus 2x minus 8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it into the formula. So a equals 3, b equals minus 2, and c equals minus 8. So what we end up typing in is your minus 2, which is a positive 2, plus and minus the square root of minus 2, and I'm going to put this in brackets squared. You have to be very careful here, because if you just put minus 2 without the brackets, it would then actually calculate it wrong, because it does 2 squared then minus it. So it follows BIDMAS correctly. So you have to put that in brackets. Minus 4 times 3 times minus 8 all over 2 times 3. So let's type that in a calculator and let's see what we get. So in this case, we get x equals 2, or x equals a wonderful minus 4/3. Put the minus symbol in. So what we end up doing is going to make it equal 0. So we're going to take away 2. The x minus 2 equals 0. That's our first bracket. Here I've got to divide by 3, so I'm going to times by 3 first of all. So we have 3x equals minus 4. Then I'm going to plus 4. So we have 3x plus 4 equals 0. And that's our second bracket. So our 3x squared minus 2x minus 8 is x minus 2. 3x plus 4. Let's have a little look at this next one. And this is actually very similar to the previous one. So if I'm actually going to scroll back up, we have our 3x squared minus 2x minus 8. Now I have 3x cubed minus 2x squared minus 8. And what we have is actually we just have another extra x stuck to everything. So we've multiplied everything by x. So you have 3x squared minus 2x minus 8. And that now is, I'm going to get the highlighter going. This bit here, I'm highlighting, is this bit of it here. So I could separately multiply out or factorize out the bit in yellow. We have x brackets x minus 2, 3x plus 4. So that is actually it factorized. So all they've done is really is put an extra x. This is the final one I'm looking at today, before we have a go at some of the exercise questions. And what you've got to be a little bit careful of is sometimes they also put in numbers. So here I have a 10, 55, and a 60. And they are both, all three of them are divisible by 5. So you might have to put a 5 outside the bracket. Some of them in the exercise book are all divisible by 3. So you kind of have to keep an eye out. It's not overly obvious every time. Just being a little bit careful. And then I look, well, what do they all divide by? They all divide by x squared. I'm going to put brackets, and then we end up with 2x squared plus 11x plus 12. I then end up having to factorize this second bit. So we have our minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, which is minus 11 plus and minus the square root of 11 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times by c, which is 12, all over 2 times 2. I'll double check which ones I was doing there. So we're only really caring about this bit here. And what we get is x equals minus 4, or x equals minus 3 over 2. Then we end up putting the minus 4 on the other side, so plus 4. So x plus 4 equals 0. Boom, that's our first thing. Then this one I times by 2. So we have 2x equals minus 3, and then I add 3. So 2x plus 3 equals 0. That's our next bracket. I can then group all of it together. So we have 5x squared brackets x plus 4, 2x plus 3. Now, I'm going to now put the questions on the page. I want you to have a go. So the first one's question 1 is the first thing with just single brackets. Question 2 is single x squared, pretty much, other than towards the end. So have a little go. And they don't have that extra x or extra bracket. And the third question is quite interesting, where you've got the extra x and then the mixture of everything. And then you've got those question 4 and 5 as well. So hopefully you've paused the video as I've gone through those different questions, and I will also put up the answers shortly. So hopefully you now understand a bit more about factorising. Feel free to go back and check the question or exercise 1B and 1A. And hopefully I'll catch you in the next video. So from MP the tutor, good luck with your A-level maths.